Great. So thank you everybody for joining. I want to spend a little bit of time just reviewing the background and what's behind these RFPs, and just make sure we sort of all understand what outcomes we're trying to drive towards here. I think it could be important in terms of you think about your proposals. And so we've invited folks who received the ag engineering RFP and folks who received the barnyard BMP RFP, both to this meeting. And I thought a lot about that in advance. It may be that we could have and should have done two separate ones, but I don't think so. I think that we'd be able to do this way. And my primary reason for wanting to do that was that I think everybody will benefit from understanding this is an initiative that is going to be interrelated. So folks who are working on the ag engineering, a part of this projects will end up in the hands of people who are actually doing the construction and the installation. So I thought it'd be useful to do that. Hopefully it'll go well for us today. If it doesn't, we can always come back and schedule another time or some other way to catch people up. But that's the reason why I'm having everybody together on the call today. I do want to take a minute. I'm assuming most people here would know a lot of the people, but I just want to make sure that we're all on board. So Allison Gibson is Executive Director of Lancaster Clean Water Partners, and Allison has played a key role in bringing together the collaborative work of partner organizations here in Lancaster County. And the Clean Water Partners is the sponsor, if you will, for these RFPs. But in the end, we'll have almost nothing to do with them, in the sense that, we're providing the platform. We helped write the RFP. We did a lot of the work to help set this up. But each and every project that comes along will be a relationship between successful bidders here and either the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay or Lancaster Farmland Trust and or the landowner. So in a lot of ways, what has happened in the past will still look exactly like that in the future. There's not going to be a middle person in there. We will be, the Clean Water Partners will be trying to keep track of what the progress is against this pilot project, how many projects actually get done, who takes them, all that kind of stuff. But that's, again, not to monitor. We're not going to be asking for reports for anybody. This is really for us to be able to assess with the Alliance and with the Trust how well this pilot project went. So Allison is the Executive Director. I'm Senior Advisor to the Lancaster Clean Water Partners. A couple of other people I want to specifically introduce. I saw Derek Fry joined us, I think.
Hello.
Hi, Derek. I only bring up Derek's name because he's the only person who's got nothing to do with anything here, which is not entirely true. Which is not entirely true. Derek has worn a number of hats at Turkey Hill Dairy. Among them, has helped with purchasing a wide variety of approaches to doing RFPs and forward buys, anything from great big massive purchases of single commodities down to purchases for parts from machine shop or truck routes and things like that. So he was an advisor to this, and wanted you to know that Derek's on the call. I think he's interested in seeing how this conversation goes and how it plays out, but he provided a lot of guidance to the team. The rest of the team that helped create, help do this, it gets a little difficult to sort of do that on a regular basis on calls. was Derek, Brad Clubb, Jeremy Weaver, and Drew Siglin from the Alliance. They were asked to join those calls on a regular basis because they each bring perspectives to this process that we're in, and not exclusively. So they were in on the calls, they were in on a lot of the reviewing of the documents, but a lot of other people along the way contributed. We sent out drafts to different people, both potential bidders as well as potential buyers, and people completely unrelated, and asked them, how can we improve this? How can we make this better? As it turns out, I think one or two of those folks may also turn out to be bidders in this process, which I don't see as a conflict of interest. They didn't write it, they didn't finalize anything, and there are people that we sent this to review and give us feedback, who are also on this call, who also helped shape it and are going to be bidders as well. So, but I want to be transparent with everybody that that's been the process. I think you get a better RFP if you get feedback on the draft and have people suggest improvements to it. So with that said, I mean, I guess the other person I should introduce, Chris Thompson, has joined us. Chris heads up the Lancaster County Conservation District. I don't think they're a buyer or seller here, Chris, or a bidder, but I know Chris is very involved, and they're the Conservation District will be very interested in the outcome of this pilot project as well. So, you want to add any words, Chris? No, that's good.
John, just let me add, I was involved in this process because of my experience in municipal work. Flyway Excavating, my firm is not for providing any proposals at this point, just so everybody's clear. We are not your competitor in this process. I'm on the Clean Water Partners Board and was asked to help because of my expertise in this area.
Yeah. So. All right, well, thank you. So that sets the stage for everybody. I'm not going to go through and introduce all of the people who are joining the call today. Just we would be taking too much time. I feel like I hope that's okay with everybody. So what I wanted to do was, first of all, take a minute and just talk about the background and what we're trying to do here. So let me see if I can I'll pull this up. Can everybody see my screen? Okay.
Yep.
So you can read this, so I'm not going to go through and reread it to you, but there is a lot of information here in terms of background, and this is a pilot project. We've done our best to try to be as clear as we can in what we're asking for, but to some extent we're going to be figuring out what works and what doesn't work. But the background to this is that we see a lot of funding coming to Lancaster County in particular, 2023, but 2024, 2025, and a high expectation that money will get put into the ground to help clean up our streams, to help our farms create sustainable futures for themselves that are environmentally okay. And that there's been a long discussion as we've gone through some of the work as Lancaster Clean Water Partners over the last several years, trying to increase the amount of funding coming to the county. Well, if we see that money come to the county, are we going to have enough capacity to do the work? And I think there's been some concern about that, and there still is some concern about that. And in 2023, we saw that rising demand, and from time to time, some disruptions in the ability to get help on projects quickly. And I want to be really clear on the front end. I don't think it's that anybody's done anything bad or that there's any difficulties that we're trying to correct in the sense of everybody trying to do the best they can. But it does sort of raise the idea that perhaps we have an inequality between the demand and the supply, and not a really good way to resolve that based on prior activities in the barnyard and on the farms, given where we've been. By that I mean most everybody sees where we've been, looks ahead to the future, and say, well, I don't know what funding there will be. I don't have really any reason to think there'll be a lot more activity this year than last year, and so I don't know what I would do to build capacity, or whether I even should. And so the thought in this process of trying to put together a forward buy is, can we reduce some of the uncertainty, point to a need that's going to be present next year, and find out who says, hey, if that's the case, I could help fill some of that need. And so you'll see that reflected in some of the questions. For instance, when we get into the document itself, there's a question about let us know how much work you did last year, how much work you think you can do next year, and what's sort of a min and max for you to gear up to do that. And that's, now you can maybe see why that question's written that way. If you did 10 projects last year and you raise your hand and say, I'll do 10 this year, and I want to participate in this, that means one thing. If you say, I did 10 last year, I could do 20 next year. I can add 10 in my proposal. I can add 10 if we do this correctly. That's really what we're after, is how do we add capacity to do the work next year? So that is, like the driving force behind trying to do this. Reduce the ambiguity. I use my own language on this, but reduce the ambiguity between buyers and sellers, such that the folks who are that are the sellers, who would have services to provide, could have a little more certainty about building their capacity or devoting resources to the work at hand next year. And the people who are in need of buying, who's going to need these services, have some consolation, if you will, or some assurance that there's going to be a supply available to do the work in the year. So that is a key. That is really a key piece of this, and what I'm sure everybody sort of scratched their head about is, so you don't have 25 or 30 farms now you can show me, or you don't have 20 or 35 ag projects you can actually show me. And the answer is no. But we do know from what's in the pipeline, the farmers that have been talked to, the money that's available, the money that's been applied for from funders, that we have a reasonable expectation of getting. When I say we, I really mean the Alliance and the Lancaster Farmland Trust. That unless something goes terribly wrong, there are going to be these demands next year for services. So that that's really kind of driving this. We have tried not to make this a price-driven thing. Of course, we all have to acknowledge that price is a factor. And so, certainly good pricing helps extend the amount of money we've gotten to do more farms. We want to be, good stewards of the money that in most cases the taxpayers are providing to do this work. So I don't want to say that pricing doesn't matter, but in terms of being able to get the work done next year, that ability to ramp up and do more work is a higher priority in terms of this RFP and what we're trying to achieve. The second piece, I guess I would say, in terms of outline and what we're trying to accomplish here is lead time. And I've got a number of questions back from people about what that means. I think the answer to some extent is going to have to be, based on what you think you could do. And I want to have this conversation again without looking back at 2023 and saying anybody did anything wrong. We all reacted to events as they unfolded over the last year as best we can. And I think, you know, pretty much everybody that's indicated an interest here has done their best to be helpful. But when we're looking at some of these projects, I think what we want to be able to do to encourage farmers to participate, and particularly to choose from a list of people who submit proposals. When the farmer has a voice in it, they won't always have a voice. And in order to get the maximum amount of work done next year with the funding that is received, shrinking the lead time by reducing the amount of uncertainty is a big goal. So if we, and I'm just using an example, if somebody says, hey, I could do X number of projects next year, I kind of have to do them one at a time because that's what my capacity is, one at a time. And so here's what I would need in order to do that. If you provide this, I could do this many projects. Somebody else might say, well, we could do two at a time, and here's what we need. But what we would like is a commitment that if we can get a steady supply of projects coming, people would say, we will give those projects priority in terms of when we start them. And here would be the lead time for us to be able to do that. So the ability to do more projects than last year is something you want to be considering in your proposal, and the amount of lead time you would need in order to gear up and take on a project is a key component. And I think when you read through the questions and the outcomes and so forth, maybe that helps make some sense as to, you know, why those are in the RFP and why they matter. So I'm not gonna right now anyway take questions because we got a lot of people that could be hard. But if you have questions, I'd encourage you write them in chat, and we'll come back and address those afterwards. What I'd like to do is move on to some questions that we have had and try to go through an FAQ that I've been pulling together to try to answer some questions. So,
John, as we do that, can you zoom in a little bit, please? It's hard to read what you have on the screen, so it just may ping people to come up with questions that they were thinking of, but if we read it again here, might remind us.
Okay.
I'll help monitor the chat. So as John said, please feel free to add any questions that you have in there.
Gonna be big enough?
Maybe two more.
Like that?
There we go. That's better for me anyway.
So wait till I pull the next one up, and it won't be big enough, but I'll fix it before we talk too much.
Thank you.
All right. So then let me pull this FAQ up. All right. Can you see that yet? No?
Not yet.
Is Jeremy Weaver still waiting?
He's here.
Okay. Hi, Jeremy.
Greetings, everybody.
All right. So
Looks great. Thanks, John.
that's bigger? Okay. So I separated these. I got more questions on the ag engineering, only a couple on the barnyard work. And I've given these the best answer that I can. Maurizio, Jeb, Drew, anybody who wants to jump in and correct or fix it, I'll fix this as we go. As I've indicated to everybody, we're finding our way through this a little bit. But you know, on the engineering side, is the goal that the engineer would deliver a shovel-ready project within 6 days of notice to proceed? Yes, that's the goal. I think people are gonna have to figure out what they could or couldn't do in their proposal, so, you know, I don't wanna tell you, well, don't worry about that, but I'm gonna tell you, like, if you could say, well, I could do it in 75 days or 90 days, I still think you should submit a proposal and tell us what you can do. Because we're trying to get some certainty built into this for everybody, you and the buyers, okay? But the goal would be try to shrink these lead times. And so I go on and explain, I think that as either the Alliance or the Trust is moving through the funding process and the work with the farmer and some of this, they're gonna have some idea that there might be some projects coming up. And I think that we're gonna be able to have communication that says, I'm probably gonna be calling you in early June with some projects, kind of thing. So I think they're not always, in fact, they're probably rarely gonna be able to forecast that with certainty. Who knows when funding will actually be announced? For instance, you know, they say, well, we'll announce it in the spring, or we'll announce it at this time. So there's always gonna be some degree of uncertainty, but I think that you're gonna be able to have a little bit of warning that some things are coming. And the goal would be, once you get the notice, hey, we've got our funding set and we're ready to go, and we need you to finish the engineering and get the permit done. You know, that's really what we're after there, to move through that. So I answer that as best I can. You can write back and either put in chat or write back and ask for further clarification of that. Drew, Mauricio, Jeb, do you want to comment on that at all? Okay.
I don't have anything to add, John. I think you pretty well covered it from my perspective.
Okay, since grant reporting is experienced as a desired skill, can the programs that are known today be provided? Based on what I think I know and what I hear, ACAP is probably going to be a high part of it. If I were to guess the number one source, it may very well be ACAP. There's going to be some RCPP projects in there. CAP and ARPA, there may be some from there. Allison, you could comment on that. And to a lesser extent, Growing Greener, MEV, INSR. So the last two being, you know, NIFWIF sources and DEP sources, Growing Greener, DEP.
And just,
Go ahead.
I was going to add a little bit of context, at least from LFT's perspective. I think, you know, the things that we are typically LFT handles, you know, 95% of its grant reporting requirements, you know, for any funding source that we have. But there are occasionally items that we need to report back to grant funders where we would need the assistance from an engineer, like quantities to help calculate reductions for nitrogen and sediment reductions and those sort of things. I think, at least from my perspective, that's typically where we tap the shoulder of an engineer to help us out with when it comes to grant reporting.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeb. Yeah, I would only add that there's a lot of acronyms there. We're happy to spell things out and say what any of those are, just to clarify and confirm what these funding sources are. And then also, I think to answer the question about, since grant reporting experience is a desired skill, it's really also calling out the need to be really clear about the agreement with the partner organization, the project lead, like knowing what the invoicing procedure is going to be, knowing what the regularity of payment is, knowing what all the expectations. So just plan to spend some extra time reading that fine print, and that will help clarify any communication that we want to do. We'll have to do along the way, but we want to do as much as we can upfront.
Yep. In terms of DEIJ, are there a specific vision for DEIJ? Well, the answer to that really is the partners and the partner organizations here all have statements of interest in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice as a part of their work. and it's an important part of their work. And so that's a part of what we're interested in. There's a lot of ways of thinking of that, and I want to probably not go into telling somebody how to write their proposal, but this may or may not be the kind of set of projects that beg for a real vibrant DEIJ approach, but we're going to be interested in knowing if you have and what your policy is on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and specifically, do you see any opportunities in this particular set of in this particular RFP for intentionally engaging with minority businesses, women business enterprises, and labor surplus area firms, or any other forms of providing access to groups or individuals who would be invited. Part of what I think all three organizations try to do is be thoughtful about, here's where I would normally go. Are there any opportunities here I should look at and include in our efforts on this particular proposal? And so we're interested in what your position is, and are there any ways that you would do that? So I think that you'll want to include whatever is appropriate for your organization in there. The question about NRCS, would there be NRCS peer review? I wrote the answer to this one, and somebody else might be able to give a better answer, but I know they're involved with at least 3 projects from RCPP, and there may be more which would require some NRCS peer review. A lot of the projects we don't yet know exactly which ones are going to be, so there may be some others in there, but there's at least 3 for sure. Number 5, people are asking, are there, can you clarify? And I'll be sending this document out, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each one. But what are the rules again? Like, you got a lot of different things going on there. Buyers of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay and Lancaster Farmland Trust. I explained that the Clean Water Partners themselves are not buyers. The Bay Chesapeake Bay Trust, Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay and the Farmland Trust are the buyers. The partners are Lancaster Clean Water Partners. Whenever you see that with a capital P, that's Lancaster Clean Water Partners. Bidders, vendors, suppliers, that's engineering firms, or on the BMP one, that's going to be excavators, concrete folks, fencing, whoever's involved in submitting a proposal. Here I call it engineering firms. But the same is going to be true with the other RFP. Will contracts be issued with the buyer, partners, or farmer? This is a very good question, this answer is true for both. I think for both engineering and I know it's true for the barnyard RFP, the BMPs. This is going to be very project funding specific. So ACAP right now, the contracts are all with the farmer. So that's where the contract would be. The buyer in some cases, which would be the trust or the alliance, would issue the contractor, while in other cases the farmer is going to be the one that has the contract. In the latter case, as we see this unfolding, when we've selected the successful bidders who are going to be involved in this, and it won't surprise us on our side in terms of issuing the RFP that we end up with several individuals or organizations who are providing services. Those successful bidders, we're going to be able to say to that farmer, here's a list of, if you will, pre-qualified, pre-screened, ready to go contractors that you can work with, and we recommend all of them to you, and they're going to have a good lead time, and they're gonna be ready to work on your project. We may have some farmers that say, hey, I want to work with the guy down the street and I don't want to talk to these people. But we do believe we'll get a lot of farmers who will find that there's several for them to pick from, that they could choose somebody that they are comfortable with, knowing that they're ready to go and there wouldn't be a big delay in getting that moving. So that's an attempt at explaining that. In some cases, the alliance or the trust is actually the recipient of the funding, and they're running the project, and the contract would be with them. In the ag engineering line, in the bid submission line too, they're asking, you've got these dates in there out to the end of February. I think this is for ag engineering maybe only. But should the pricing be valid until February of 2025? And the answer is yes, that would be preferable. If you don't want to do that, can you add how pricing would be set during that time in your mind? Okay. In the exhibit, should we assume that one of each BMP would be included in the scope or fee on the top section of the page? Yeah, I think you should. It's almost certain it won't be in every, in every one. So each project as it becomes available will need a final adjusted bid price for that project. I'm not sure I understand this question. Do we assume 1 out of 6 farms will require a GP of some sort? But I'm committing to answer that one. Geology report, we'll get an answer on that. So I've got 2 questions I can't answer today, unless Jeb or Mauricio wants to jump in and answer either of those. We can answer them by Wednesday.
Yeah, the GP question. It's definitely not going to be all of them. I'm not sure it's 1 out of 6. I mean, we can try to put our heads together and try to determine what's the best number there. But I think the point is it's not going to be all of them. And yeah, I'm not sure the answer to the geology report one either.
Okay. The ag conservation plans, they're going to be determined by the project and the funder. For landowner coordination, can we assume the buyer will continue to be the main point of contact? In general, yes, because these are going to be farmers that the trust or the alliance have a good relationship with, and they'll be, even if the contract is with the farmer, the alliance and the trust are probably going to be we're going to remain involved. But where that contract is with the farmer or the landowner, there's obviously going to have to be a relationship there as well. Engineering design, since this bid is for a conceptual project, would be helpful if you had some sizes of the BMPs. I don't know quite how to do that, other than to say, we think on average these projects are going to be the $200,000 to $300,000 range. But I already know there's one that's probably smaller than that for sure, and there may very well be some that are bigger than that. So, but these are not, I don't think, typically small undertakings. They're going to be a little more comprehensive in scope and size. Again, I'll stop for a minute, Jeb or Maurizio, if you want to comment.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for the engineers who have worked with Lancaster Farmland Trust on similar projects in the past, it's the sort of and this isn't probably going to answer the question, but it's the typical Amish dairy project that you worked on with the manure pit and barnyard project with Lancaster Farmland Trust. It's very, very similar project. None that that at least on my forecasted list are sort of oddball projects, I would say. So, and again, I'm not sure how much that helps, but there's none on my list that are sort of really out of the norm.
Mhm.
Similar
Okay.
here, I believe that most of our projects that are in the pipeline are for small dairies. Maybe a couple of poultry farms would be included in there, but for the most part, it's going to be dairy farms, milking between 60 to 80 cows and probably no more than 100 acres. So all of you are familiar with those, and traditionally are going to be manure storage, heavy use areas, waterways, the traditional practices that you are already used to seeing around here in Lancaster. Sizes is gonna, be different at each farm.
On the QA component, are you looking for an hourly rate to inspect the components and provide as-bills? Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. Again, these are all going to end up being individualized. So the project and the funder, may put some nuances to that, but I think for the engineering folks, that's what you need. On the barnyard BMPs, this one I don't have an answer on, and I didn't get a chance to. Maurizio was out on vacation, and I didn't get a chance to touch base with him. The 4 farms are Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay farms. I would assume we could get site visits arranged, Mauricio.
Yeah, we can try to do that. But we can try to have a visit where everybody that's interested can join us. We'll have to coordinate with the DSP though, because I imagine there will be a lot of technical questions, so we need to coordinate with them, which I believe for all of them, it might be TMAG. So we can work with TMAG to coordinate maybe a day where we hit all 4 farms. I mean, we could certainly try to do that.
Okay. Well, I didn't put in the entire question, Maurizio, but it's something to think about. I mean, one of the part of that question was, well, I can take what you've given me and I can put a bid in on. If I did a site visit, I could make it a tighter bid. Since I don't have a site visit, I was reading between the lines. Since I don't know exactly what I'm looking at, I probably would have to I have to have a more conservative bid.
Yeah,
So-
that happens. I mean, yeah, taking a look of the farm and what is needed is definitely going to help them to come up with the most accurate estimate quote. Therefore, we could facilitate that and have a day where we can visit the 4 projects, and we will have the DSP TMAG there to explain or to answer any question, because I'm pretty sure that's what's gonna happen.
Well, we've got a fairly limited amount of time, so we'll have to work with TMAG and the Alliance. If we can come up with a date, we'll let people know what that is. If we don't, then I would say, the answer is going to be, well, give us the best bid you can with what you have, and we can circle back around later and look at it. Second question was, do I need to respond to both to the 2024 needs with a proposal as well as a proposal on the 4 farms, or could I bid one or the other? And the answer to that is, well, if you want to bid on the 4 farms at this point, we'd like you to also put in a proposal for the overall 2024 participation. I think the access to these 4 farms was attached to responding to the RFP. If you are going to respond to the RFP and you say, my proposal does not involve those 4 farms because I'm not prepared at this time, but I will be prepared next year to do X, that could be okay. Where it's not a requirement that you bid on those 4 farms necessarily. I don't know if that's clear as mud. I can try to clarify that, but what we're I'll say as clearly as I can. What we're not looking for is somebody go, hey, that's great, I'll bid on those 4 farms. Good luck with next summer. That's probably not going to be very well received. How's that? I see Team Ag has her hand up.
Yeah, John, this is Chris Sigmund. I think if, from my perspective, if we had mud, it would be clear. This really is not clear at all to me about how we're going here. I think the fact that we have 4 farms that Team Ag designed is somewhat surprising to me, although not completely. And a fundamental tenet of the Clean Water Partners has been to respect existing relationships with producers. And that doesn't seem to be the case here. We've heard that over and over and over again, and we've all tried to work in that fashion. I definitely understand your need to work through the challenges of getting work done. I think when you bring certain funding sources into play here, like ACAP, we know that money does not need to be spent out until December of 2026. So I think it's really important that we try to work efficiently inside of this process, as we have, as you've highlighted here, a deficiency of technical assistance and an oversupply of money. And it seems to me that the efficient process would involve respecting existing relationships that producers have with technical service providers. And just for simplicity, I would state that if a TSP has developed a CNMP for a farm that you're looking to include inside of this RFP, that should constitute an existing relationship. And you might want to think about separating certain farms out into different categories where planning needs to be done so that producers can work with those other TSPs so those plans can be developed and run through this process. There's a lot of challenges inside of this process that you're trying to put out here. And yeah, I'm at a loss actually of, as I shared with you in our phone call the other day, this is, I guess this is version 1.0 of many revised editions to come, but I would hope that 2.0 is considerably better thought out than this one.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. Chris, I'm not, so to be clear, on the barnyard work, I don't think there's anything in between any of the relationships. It's who's going to do the work on the farm. In terms of the engineering work, these would be projects that I would assume at this point don't have somebody lined up to do that TSP work. And so I respectfully don't think that we're interfering with existing relationships. If we are, then I would agree we should try to manage that as well as we can through the process.
Yeah, when you have contractors on a call here like this, typically the contractors would work with the engineer that designed the project. There might be a pre-bid meeting at the site where the engineer of record or a representative of that engineer would review that design at the farm, and then the contractors would have the opportunity to answer questions and some dialogue and really hone in on their price at their bid. So I don't personally feel like there's enough information for a contractor to give a good bid here. And I also, as far as the relationship goes, if there is an engineer of record, someone who designed this, usually that firm continues with the quality assurance, completes the red line drawings and as-built and close out paperwork. So I know at the onset of your comments here, you indicated that your goal was to remove ambiguity, but frankly, I feel like you have indeed increased the amount of ambiguity inside of this effort, and we're actually going to end up with a less efficient process than what we might otherwise have if you simply connected producers with existing relationships to contractors. I don't see how we're getting more efficient here. In fact, a lot of what we're dealing with in terms of challenges with the availability of technical assistance comes from, as we discussed the other day, a system that is fundamentally inefficient and filled with challenges relating to getting approvals. And that's why we are where we are today when you drop unprecedented amounts of money on top of a problem when you haven't thought about how to build up the technical capacity beforehand.
Well, I think this is a discussion that to some extent we're gonna have to continue in some other format. I would say to everyone on the call, the expectation is that on the engineering side, the trust and the alliance have projects they're working on with landowners and have a relationship. And there's an assumption that in many cases there is not an existing relationship with the TSP. So I don't.
John, I can chime in.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeb.
John, I can chime in at least to give LFT's perspective, and this is to the context of none of the 4 shovel-ready projects on this list are LFT projects. So maybe Mauricio can chime in on those existing relationships there, but the anticipated projects that LFT believes will be coming down the pike here in 2024, none of which I'm pretty confident to say that the majority of those farms on that list, if not all of them, there's no sort of official existing relationship with a TSP of any of those farms. Those have been leads that LFT has cultivated and scoped, and we have sort of they're at the holding pattern where they're ready to go to that next step to a TSP, and that's really where we're at. So, and if we were to have any, like I said, we don't have any shovel-ready projects, and shovel-ready for us meaning it's already designed. So in that essence, we wouldn't need the design proposal work. So, and I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe there's just some misunderstanding. Maybe the 4 farms that are referenced here, maybe we're really not looking for those to be bid on by the engineer. Maybe those are just for the barnyard contract.
Yeah,
No,
if I
they're
may
not.
here, because these are alliance projects, and just to be clear here, the expectation is that TMAG continues and finish the design engineering that is needed for those projects. I don't know, maybe Chris, you might be confused a little bit, but for the 4 projects for the heavy use areas, we're trying just to find contractors right now. We're not trying to find TSPs to complete the work in these 4 projects. That would be not ideal at this point when we have invested so much time and resources. So I would expect that TMAG is going to complete this. And right now we're trying just to find options on contractors for the construction. And we need to do that regardless because of the funding that we currently have in hand for many of these projects needs to follow our procurement guidelines. And we need to put this project to bid in order to follow those guidelines because we have more significant amount of money that we're going to be investing in those 4 projects. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with this, and to provide, options to the farmers. At the end of the day, the farmers are going to be making the final decision. We're not going to be imposing, and we're going to be respecting all those relationships that have been developed between a farmer and a contractor. So what we're trying here again is to provide options. And if at the end the farmer decide not to take that option, then fine. And it's going to be at the end their decision. But we want to provide the best options available. And if this can help us to provide those options, why not? But again, the TSP part is already covered for these 4 projects. For 2024, it's something that we can discuss, and something that in the pipeline, if there are projects that don't have a TSP in mind, then we would certainly be interested in maybe offering different options to those that don't have an established relationship. But if they do, we will continue to cultivate that and continue that, because we don't want to make this process more complicated.
Thank you, Mauricio. Thank you, Jeb, for those clarifications. Just a time check, we're at about 3:55 almost. And John, I know you said there are a few things we'll probably take offline and continue adding answers to other questions that come up. Chris, I hope that gave some more clarity on what you were asking about.
Yeah, I think that's really, I think where we were at. We didn't get any questions in the chat, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. You can expect, for those of you that would be looking for the RFP for barnyard work, for the contracting, and particularly for the, that are interested in the 4 farms, we'll try to get a note out to everybody, letting them know when we could do a landowner visit. Chris, we're going to be hoping that Team Ag will be willing to participate in that. So, there's a couple of questions in there I don't have answers, that I will try to get answers out to everybody. But you have my phone number, you have my email. If a question comes up as you're preparing a proposal, please don't hesitate to reach out. This is, there's a lot of different ways of looking at things. I'd probably try to make sure I'm using the right words of you. If it was a request to bid, there would be a very tight, narrow, give us a bid. If you're doing a request for proposals, there's a lot of room in there for you to describe to us what you would do, how you would handle it, and what would work for you. And I think, the goal here is to, when we're done, to come up with a good set of opportunities for as many organizations as possible to be involved, and do it as fairly as we can. So I tried to highlight the things that are going to matter. It's the number of projects over what we've done in the past. It's the ability to be predictable about a lead time. What can you tell us about a lead time? And other than that, try to give as good an idea as you can on pricing where you can. That will certainly be helpful. I don't think I have anything else to add. Mauricio, Jeb, Allison, do you want to add anything else?
Nothing specific, just appreciate everybody's interest and commitment to trying something new, and appreciate the conversation as we work through this opportunity that we have. Always room for improvement, but excited to see what people come back with so that we make the best 2024 we can.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll let everybody go. You know where to find me. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Thanks all.